Could the presenters please check your mics, and in case you want to use your PPTs? Of course, my student is there ready to help you people out.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Will you be using your PPT?
Ma'am, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. We can hear you.
Hello, George, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon. I can hear. No problem.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
I was in conversation earlier, so I guess I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible. Very much audible. So,
yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank God you could join.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Not at all. Not at all.
Konnichiwa, Gita Sensei.
Yeah, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa, sensei.
Konnichiwa, Dinamani. Konnichiwa, Janashruti. Yeah,
greetings,
Kawani-san.
greetings.
Konnichiwa.
よろしくお願いします。
こちらこそよろしくお願いします。
Lakshmi is joining in.
My PPT, I have requested Dunia-san.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, George Sensei, Janashruti, Dinamani, Gita Sensei, and
Yes, good afternoon.
thank
Good
you for
afternoon.
joining us. Let's start the session. It's a little past 2, as much as Japanese we can be. I will hand over to my students who will do a formal introduction, and then we'll pass on the chair to the chair, George Sensei. We are recording. We are also live streaming the thing, so anyone can watch from outside also. Over to you. I think this is Mithilesh and Vicino's session. Yeah, over to you people. Please introduce the panel.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 4th session of India-Japan at 70, Introspection, Insights, and Initiatives. I am Vishana Kiso, a doctoral candidate at the Center of East Asia JNU. This session is titled Culture, Civilization, and People's Connect. We are very honored to have you all joining us for this session. I especially welcome all the panelists for this session. My fellow student Mithilesh and I will be introducing the panelists. To begin with, I take this privilege to introduce the chair for the session and the first presenter. We are very delighted and privileged to have Professor P.A. George to chair this session. Professor P.A. George is a professor of Japanese language and literature and the current chairperson of the Center for Japanese Studies, School of Language, Literature, and Cultural Studies, JNU.
1 second again. Okay, yeah.
Professor P.A. George has done extensive research in modern Japanese literature, especially on Shimazaki Toson, Miyazawa Kenji, and Ishikawa Tokugaku. Professor P.A. George was a recipient of the Japan Foundation Fellowship, and he was also a visiting scholar at Waseda University, Iwate University, and International Research Center for Japanese Studies, and visiting professor at Kwansei Gakuin University. He has published and authored, edited several books, and also several academic papers in Japanese and English in both India, Japan, and the USA. He is a pioneer in introducing Japanese literature to Indian readers and is a known translator of Japanese literature into Malayalam and English. Professor George was bestowed with the Japanese Foreign Minister Commendation in 2016 in recognition of its outstanding contribution to Japanese studies in India. He is also a recipient of the coveted Miyazawa Kenji Soreisho Award by the Hanamaki City Government in 2002 for his scholarly achievements and extensive research on Miyazawa Kenji. Professor George, we're very honored to have you here. Thank you so much. Our first presenter for today is Dr. Dinamani. Dr. Dinamani is an assistant professor of Japanese literature, language literature, and cultural studies at JNU, New Delhi. In addition to Japanese history and philosophy, his area of expertise also includes the study of Japanese culture as the policy imperative for modern India. Dr. Dinamani has extensively researched on Japanese nationalism and its influence in making Japan a great nation despite staggering challenges. Furthermore, Indo-Japan relations and their historic significance have also been part of the domain of his research work. He is also a staunch supporter of Indo-Japan relations and believes that it has been on a positive and creative course since its inception and has gained renewed momentum and impetus in recent times. Thank you, Dr. Dinamani, for joining us today. I now hand over to my fellow student, Mr. Mitalish, to introduce the remaining two speakers.
Thank you, Vishyano. Our next speaker is Dr. Janashruti Chandra. Dr. Chandra teaches Japanese language at Center for Japanese Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, as an assistant professor since 2002. Before that, she was a Max Scholar and recipient of Osaka Prefectural Scholarship and has spent considerable time in Japan as a student at Kyoto University of Education and Osaka University of Foreign Studies. Her research interests lie in the fields of linguistics, teaching methodology, translation studies, Japanese cultural studies, and children's literature. She was engaged in drafting of school textbooks of Japanese language in collaboration with Japan Foundation and is at present designing the certificate course program in the online mode for JNU. She has been a visiting research scholar to Osaka University under the Japan Foundation Fellow Program and has to her credit several research papers presented in both national and international forums. She has held the post of Secretary, Japanese Language Association of India, and at present serving as treasurer. She has been actively promoting Japanese language and culture in India. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Our next speaker is Ms. Kawane Tomo. Born in Tokyo, Japanese is her mother tongue, but she is proficient in Indian languages, especially in Hindi and Gujarati, having lived in India for 30 years. Gathering grassroots feedbacks through vernacular voices has been her forte. Based on her graduation thesis on Gandhi's criticism on industrialized civilization, she was awarded India-Japan Cultural Scholarship by the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Government of India. She obtained MA in International Politics at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and further researched on voluntary sector in her MPhil in Political Science at Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda in Gujarat on a grassroots initiative to set up a residential school for girls for continuing education after primary schooling. She has done extensive community-based works, including 4 years in Kutch post-Gujarat earthquake. She was also part of the local coordination of Japan's first official emergency disaster relief to India. Consulate General of Japan at Mumbai invited her as their first external consultant to, offer advisory services for government and NGOs, corporate entities, and higher educational institutions for their greenfield projects. Currently, she researches on resilience and entrepreneurship of MSMEs in Gujarat and Maharashtra. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. Next, we have Dr. Geeta Kinney. Dr. Geeta joined the Department of Japanese Vishwabharati in 1989 and is the departmental chair since 2013. She obtained her first master's degree in philosophy from the University of Calcutta and second one from the Tokyo Joshi Daigaku, Japan in history. She did her PhD under the Women's Studies Research Center, University of Calcutta. Her research work was conducted at International Research Center for Japanese Studies, Kyoto, under Japan Foundation Doctoral Fellowship. Her publications include works on Japanese language, literature, socio-cultural studies, paraminology, as well as Tagore's and Japan in Japanese, English, and Bengali. She edited the proceedings of the conference volume Rabindranath Tagore and Japan, held on the occasion of centenary year celebration of Tagore's the maiden visit to Japan. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Now, I would like to invite Chair to proceed the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Before starting the session, first of all, I would like to congratulate Professor Rohit Chaudhary and CEAS and the PA Foundation for organizing this wonderful online seminar. Because I have been watching it since I started attending it, and I found that the attendance highly appreciable. You know, there were almost 100 yesterday morning sessions, and today also I found the first session almost 80 attendant listeners, online listeners to the ambassadors session. So my heartfelt congratulations to Professor Shravani Roy Chaudhary and also the Foundation, especially to Sato-san. Without their cooperation, I think this type of seminars would not have happened. And also, I would, before starting the session, would like to announce that CJS is going to have another international seminar, not in this year, but next year, February, first week. So I, in advance, invite all of you to participate in the seminar, and especially Professor Roy Chaudhary will have, and Professor Geeta Kinney will have major roles to play in that seminar. So that is one thing. Second thing is, I should have told personally to Professor Roy Chaudhary that Dr. Geeta Kinney is no more associate. She is professor. So I thought that I will openly announce it here. Yeah, she is professor since 2014.
Yeah.
Not today or yesterday. So she is a senior professor now. So my congratulations also goes to her because she was waiting. You should have come to her many years ago, but she got it with prospective effect. So that is okay. With this, I think I would like to start the session. Now, actually, the time given is 90 minutes total, but already I think more than 10 minutes we have, consumed. So remaining maybe 80 minutes. So I would like the speakers to finish their presentation in 15 minutes each, so that at least 10 minutes we can have for question answer after that. Because there are five speakers. Four speakers. So 4 speakers, so that we have 60 minutes for presentation and then 20 minutes for question answer session. Okay. Having said this, I don't want to give any introductory remarks because of shortage of time. But I'm very happy that for this session also around 60 people are going to listen to our presenters. So first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Dinamani for his presentation. Please stick to the time, 15 minutes. Please stick to the time. Otherwise, we will be in trouble because I saw Professor Chowdhury was very particular about keeping the time in the previous sessions. So please keep to that. Yeah. Dr. Dinamani?
Dinamani? Are you frozen?
I think that something happened to his.
Yeah.
Should we go to the next speaker? Meanwhile, he is.
No, it looks like I believe they both have coordinated their presentation such that one flows to the other.
Okay.
Jane, you were having.
Oh, am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was only saying that I think half an hour is given separately for the question answer session.
Yeah.
And so I guess we have almost around 20 minutes.
Yeah, around.
Okay.
20 minutes for
okay.
For presentation only 15 minutes. And for question answers, 20 minutes. Because total time is only 90 minutes.
Is it?
2 to 4, Sensei?
2 to 4. The session is from 2 to 4, I guess. And
so 2:15 now.
Session is 2 to 3:30.
No, I think in the new the leaflet.
The next, I think this was the initial one. The later.
I see. Okay. Okay, then it's okay. Then 20 minutes.
Yeah.
If it is 2 to 4, then 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now.
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Not as yet. Yeah, it's visible.
Right.
You can put it full screen, Dinamani.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to begin by congratulating Professor Sravani Rai Chaudhary, who was also my supervisor during my PhD days, for organizing this seminar and providing me an opportunity to share my understanding about Buddhism and its soft power credentials. I would also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Japan Foundation for always being there and support us in our effort to disseminate Japanese language, literature, and culture, not only in India, but also across Asia. So now I'll go directly to my subject of presentation. The topic on which I'm speaking this afternoon has an overarching gamut, and therefore I have to be brief in order to capture the essence of Buddhism and its soft power potential for both India and Japan. So that's the outline of my presentation, but I'll go directly to the first slide, and that is the Japan's empirical understanding of power play. Looking at the history of Japan, we see that initially Japan was, a very withdrawn kind of country, and it was not having any access to what we call the power play, the new concept. And it got introduced to this idea on many occasions. Two of them are very important, and that I'm going to cite. One is the advent of Matthew C. Perry and consequent crisis for Japan. We all know that Matthew C. Perry came to Japan in 1853 and forced Japan to open its door to the Western world and ended the long period of sakoku, the isolation of Japan, to the whole world, in fact. And he forced Japan to sign two important treaties, one called Kanagawa and the other is Harris Treaty. One was signed in 1854, the other was in 1858. This 1858 treaty was very important for one particular thing, which has an extraterritorial clause. This meant that if any foreign national is committing any crime on Japanese soil, he will not be tried by the law of Japan, but rather he will be tried through the law of their own land, and they will be, sent back to their own country. It was absolutely disparaging to Japan, and if we are going to speak in terms of modern international relations parlance, then it was a sheer violation of sovereignty of Japan. And Japan was never easy to take it, and therefore they wanted to do away with this treaty, and they tried really very hard. This advent of Matthew C. Perry plunged the whole Japan into a kind of crisis, and which led a civil war in Japan that primarily ended with the advent of Great Meiji Restoration. The first task of major restoration concerning the international relations of Japan was the Iwakura mission. The mission was given two tasks. One was to learn the ways of the Western world of
Dinamani,
yes.
Could you please talk a little louder? We're having a little problem with you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
This is better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was saying that the Iwakura mission has got two important tasks to achieve for Japan. One was to learn the ways of the West of modernization and empowerment. The other was to do away with this Iwakura mission. One mission was achieved by Iwakura mission. The other was, not achieved. It failed in its major objective, and that was the doing away with this extraterritorial clause. The reason for that Japan understood very well, because Japan was not considered a powerful nation in the eyes of the Western world. And therefore, Japanese statesmen thought very hard and long and came to a decision that without having a power commensurate with the Western world, it's not easy to get your things done with the Western world. That was the first lesson of Japan in the international relations. The second important lesson that Japan learned was during the time of triple intervention. After the battle with China in 1895, Japan won the battle, and it was very, encouraged to do its own things in the international arena. But soon this encouragement was gone. This enthusiasm was, gone, because the three great nations, Germany, France, and Russia, they intervened and they asked Japan to return back the important assets that Japan won as indemnity during the war. The one was the Port Arthur, and that was a very important port because it was all-weather port.
I think again, there is some connection problem, I think.
Actually, it is raining
It's raining there? Okay.
in Jane. I think he's having issues with events.
Dinamani, he has already left.
I think he's trying to log in. I think it'll be better.
Yeah, log in, trying to log in, I think.
Yeah. It will be better, I think, for Dinamani to keep his video off. I think that will work better.
Yeah, we'll tell him that.
Okay.
What to do? I think, should we ask the next person to?
Unfortunately, would you then take over, or should we start by disconnecting both of you and doing Kawame-san's?
I am good to go.
You're good to go. Then let's start off with you then.
Sure. Tunia.
Yeah, then please, somebody should inform by phone that Dinamani, that he will again present it later.
I've been writing to him, but even his WhatsApp is not reaching.
Yeah, that's the thing. So through telephone, maybe.
Hello. Yeah.
So should we just ask Janashruti to start her presentation?
Since I'm fine.
because otherwise we will not be able to finish it in time.
For time.
So may I request then
Yes.
Janashruti, Dr. Janashruti to present her paper. She will be presenting her presentation is on language bridges between Japan and India, past, present, and future.
Yes.
So please take over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the organizers and Shabani ma'am for giving me this opportunity to present in this 70th year of Indo-Japan diplomatic ties. Thank you, Tunya, for sharing the slide. I start my presentation. The first slide goes as, could you scroll down? Yes, thank you. So I start my presentation with a quotation about the sphere of influence that the culture of India has always been one of the most powerful civilizing forces. And countries of the Far East in particularly, with Japan, which I have bold, put in bold letters here, owes much to India for the best of what it can call its culture. Today, I will be speaking about Japan's linguistic linkages with India. Another work, a much older work, by Junjiro Takakuso Sensei of 1925. The title is What Japan Owes to India. I will be referring to this work in the later slides. Next, please. Tunya-san, next. Thank you. So there have been two waves of Indian influence so far. The first is the previous slide. So there have been two waves of influences that have happened, one in the ancient time and the second in the modern time. Language, as we all know, like any cultural phenomena, always tends to sort of, move across space, geographical boundaries. So in modern times, it is very easy to recognize if it's a foreign loan word, especially if it is written in Gairaigo. And so you have these words which are written in katakana, for example, yoga, sari, samosa, dosa, doa, and of now the more recent one, the keyword, the animal, our guest, cheetah. All these words have some Indian connects. Tunya-san, I will tell you when it is next. Please go back to the second slide. No. Yes, thank you. I will tell you. So these words, these loan words, the Gairaigo, are either direct borrowings or are via some other language. So in modern times, by modern times, I mean, of course, post-Meiji, when the interaction with the rest of the world restarted again. Next, please. Next slide. To go on to the next slide, the ancient times. Sensei, can I? Okay, so in the ancient times, the language exchange has been via Shinto or Buddhism. These words have gone from Sanskrit or from Pali. The first slide had talked about Junjiro Takakuso and that work of 1925. There are 2 articles out of 7 which are devoted to names and words which are derived from Sanskrit. The list is quite exhaustive. For example, all the words which are related to Buddhism or Shintoism, Daigokten, Emma, Yasha, Bhikkhu, Bhikkhuni, Amida, Goma, Sotoba, Zen, all these are borrowed lexicons which have come to which went to Japan via Shinto and Buddhism. Besides these, in day-to-day lexicon also, there are these words which are borrowings from Sanskrit. For example, Hatha comes from the word Pitaka. Sara, which means a plate, comes from Sara. Setsuna, it comes from the Sanskrit word Shana. Namai, name, these type of words in his work. And you can figure out that the Sanskrit influence has been quite exhaustive on Japanese lexicon. Next, please. If I talk only of the script, in Japanese, there are 3 scripts: kana syllabary, which is hiragana, katakana, as well as kanji. I have not mentioned here, but the kanji also has got 3 readings, where the oldest reading, the go-on, comes from vocabulary which went through Buddhism in the first wave when Chinese readings reached Japan. Besides that, in kana syllabary, the sequence of the syllables, the letters also, are arranged in such a manner which follow the Siddham script or the Shittan script. I do not know Siddham script myself, so I've just quoted from some works which we usually cover in one of our PhD courses about who got Siddham script to Japan. So in 607 AD, Ono no Imoko brings 2 palm leaf manuscripts from China in Siddham script. These manuscripts, the Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra and the Uchnish Vijayadharani, these are kept in the Horyuji temple. Next. It was only in 736 when Bodhisena reached Japan that the Japanese people took time to understand what is Siddham and not just preserve it in the museums. And this is only to have the correct pronunciations for the Dharanis. The basic primer for Siddham was credited to Kukai in 806. I will skip this part about Siddham because if there are questions later, we can probably take it up. Next. This is how Siddham looks. If you see the picture, this is from off the net by a photography collection by Behel. So it, on the tombstones, these ones are the, at the back, if you can see, which looks not kanji, those are the Siddham script. Next, please. Next. Yes. Just to give an idea about language families in Asia, Japanese is a language isolate. If you saw that map, which was in the previous slide, only Japan was colored in light blue, which says it is a language isolate, and Japan is only related to the Ryukyu dialects. For a very Japanese people, or probably held on to the language ideology or the ideology of Nihon Jinron, which assumed that Japan is unique and hence it rejected cultural inflows. It was in 1957 that Ono Susumu comes up with a book, Nihongo no Kigen, where he talks about the linkages of Japanese with Korean, Sino-Tibetan, Altaic, Ainu, etc. Of these, as of today, the Ural-Altaic language is the dominant hypothesis. However, it remains unsolved. Robert Caldwell in 1857 had given a comparative grammar of the Dravidian or South Indian family of languages, and it was Caldwell who had suggested Japanese and Tamil links. Next, please. This is Ono Susumu, Professor of Linguistics of Gakushuin University, and this is his book, The Tamil Hypothesis. This is Nihongo to Tamirgo. Next, please. Ono Susumu sensei's research interest was initially Telugu. In 1991, International Conference in Tamil Studies, which was held in Madurai, he talked about one question asking all the scholars of Tamil language of whether they had ever thought of Tamil linkages with Japan. He had shifted from Telugu to Tamil for certain reasons. In his research, he sort of talks about 500 lexicon similarities. His research is corroborated by some of our colleagues, senior colleagues, Balambal Sensei, Ramalakshmi Sensei, Solomon Sensei. So these 500 lexicons, the similarities were also noticed by Japanese language teachers. Gitaigo are like onomatopoeia, but which talk about states. So you have words like potsu, potsu, waku, waku, kusu, kusu, which are there in Tamil as well as in Japanese. Adjectives before noun are also like na adjective. They have this na adjective similarity. Adverbs are placed before verbs. Tamil has postpositions. The demonstrative pronouns are very similar. They have the something which is near is ko, medium is so, something far is a. So kore, sure, are. These demonstrative pronouns are very similar. The kinship terms in both the languages, again, are very similar. Also, the sound structure in both the languages were found to be similar. Next, please. When a language expert looks into language genealogy, they also look at supporting document anthropologically. So Ono Susumu found burial patterns similar in ancient Tamil and Yayoi era. Also, traditions similar to seppuku or harakiri has been documented in Sangam literature. After his 1981 talk, there was another scholar, Akira Fujiwara, who talks about where has Japanese language come from, and he dealt with Dravidian language as a whole. Ono Susumu's Tamil hypothesis has been critiqued by many people, and one of the prominent critics is Roy Andrew Miller, who was the proponent of the Ural-Altai language hypothesis. There were other critiques also, but one, Muneo Tokunaga Sensei, was somebody who knew both classical Tamil and Japanese, and he suggested Professor Ono to consult Dravidian researchers overseas and not scholars from India. And this opened up a Pandora of controversies. Next, please. '60th anniversary of India-Japan diplomatic ties. There was a special lecture delivered at Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where again, this Tamil linkages were sort of underlined and highlighted, where Dr. Kothanandram talked about the SOV pattern in both the languages, the deep structure, the scrambling, that you can change the order of the words in any way as long as the verb is at the end. And also that the poems in old Tamil literature follow the 5-7-5-7-7, what we know in Japanese as the tanka format. Let's say the precursor to a better known in haiku to most people. Next, please. I do not know Sanskrit. I do not know Tamil. I teach Japanese. I can tell you from a teacher's perspective that for any adult learner, if we base the starting point of language learning with similarities, it is very effective and faster to learn. When I had started learning Japanese, I actually thought I had an advantage because Japanese was exactly like Bangla. There was no gender, there was no number. As long as I just switched the vocabulary, I could get the sentence correct. Also, I had read up about, the coastal regions and ancient Bengal to be a hub of shipbuilding and commercial trade links with Southeast Asia. So for a minute, I actually thought that possibly Bengali language as such had some connect with Japanese. A little more informed research told me that Odia is an older language than Bengali. And of course, Odisha has documented Buddhist excavations. The Rath Yatra of Odisha is very similar to the Gion Matsuri floats. As I progressed in my language learning and started discussing about language linkages, I also learned that Telugu, a little more south to Odisha, also was a SOV language, was agglutinating, was a language where family names precede the first name. The lexicons were very similar. And after all, Ono Susumu Sensei did start off with Telugu as the research point for Indian language linkages. After that, only Tamil happened. There are many more languages where some cultural similarities can be harped on. Just because of paucity of space, I've not mentioned all, but since majority of our students come from the Hindi language belt, Professor George can tell you about the last MPhil scholar who talked about somatic, the student who did on somatic lexicon with Hindi and Japanese. So if you find some similarities to start with, language learning becomes easier. Next, please. When I got the chance to go to Japan, and I posed this question of language genealogy, to study or not to study, my supervisors told me, no, that it is a black hole. I did not understand why it was a black hole. Possibly the time was not ripe then. Perhaps it is okay now. Of course, we as Indians have to see whether it helps our cause or not, whether harping on one language linkage with any other foreign language will, raise the Aryan Dravidian supremacy debate once more. If it does not help our country. Also, right after Ono Susumu's research.
Janashruti, you have to conclude now.
This is the last slide almost. After Ono Susumu's research came out, there was another old work that came into light, Homer Hulbert's Korean language and the Dravidian languages. And capitalizing on this, the Koreans were fast enough to, have the narrative of the Ayodhya kingdom and the Indian princes. The Ayodhya kingdom was possibly the Ayodhya kingdom, and the Indian princess was possibly from the Pandya Empire. So it did not help Indo-Japan connection, really. It might have helped Indo-Korean relationship. Next, please. Next. Yes, this is my last slide. Just to hand it. This is just to hand over to the last panelist. is we've talked about Indian language linkages in the past. Today, at present, there are 38,000 students learning Japanese in India. And in Japan, Japan has been reciprocating also. There are 4 to 5 universities in Japan that also teach Indian languages. The language policy has become much more foreigner friendly, I would say, and study books, study help from Just So, those are found in Indian languages also. You have the Just So study in Japan manual in Hindi as well as Bengali. And possibly in times to come, they will come up with more versions. The translation industry in Japan is very robust. With this, I would like to hand over to the next panelist, but I do not know whether it is Kawane-san or we go back to Bimani Sensei. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Janashri. And it was actually, I think, very few presentations on this topic made earlier in India. Actually, Ono Susumu Sensei has come out with a very solid proof, but other researchers say that we have to conduct more research in this field, then only we can establish. However, certain cultural aspects, like you referred about the Reth, the Gion Matsuri's Hokodate Hoko, that is actually not similar to that Rath Yatra of Odisha, but it is more similar to the temple Kudira, the Kerala Rath, similar, very similar Hoko, very similar. If you just search it in internet, the Kudira, Kuthira, which is used in temple festival, which is exactly same as the Hokodate of Tate Hoko desu ka? Tate Hoko of Gion festival. Very similar. It is, that's why I presented this. I mentioned about this in one of the seminars we had in JNU. It is the responsibility of young scholars to take up the comparative studies of all these cultural aspects. And now I think my personal opinion is that even those research scholars in area study, they should also diversify the field of research and take up such historical cultural interactions between Japan and India. Not only the culture studies scholars, even the area studies scholars, they should take up such topics. Even if you don't know the language, it's okay. I think the need of the time is to conduct various research in various fields where we had interaction with Japan since right from the ancient time. And of course, some of the young scholars in Japan and in India, they have started, but the number is very few, very few. Whatever Janashrudi's paper we heard today, each point requires special research and study to establish. So that is my request to young scholars. Now, should we, Dinamani, are you ready with the
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think it was
the presentation, or should we go to Kawane-san's presentation first?
As you said.
Because it's connected, I think. That's what Janashruti was saying.
Okay.
Doshimashouka. Kawane-san. 大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫ですけど、ディナマニさんのビデオがもし動いているのであれば、そちらを先にしても大丈夫です。
じゃあ、それ、まずやって、それから川根さんに移ります。はい。じゃあ、ディナマニ、Dr. Dinamani, please send your paper once again, right from the beginning.
I'm sharing.
Okay. And strictly, follow the timing.
Okay, so I hope my slides are visible. And I'm audible
Yeah,
also. Is it
Yeah,
okay? So, okay. So, should I start right from the beginning, or I'll go from here on?
that's better, because there was no, it's got disconnected, no? So
Okay. So
we all forgot what you said first. So
okay. So
joking.
initially I was talking about the Japan-centric understanding of power play, the international power play. Japan was primarily a very withdrawn country for most of the times of its history. And it learned the lessons of international politics in the beginning in a very hard way. So I have only taken two examples how Japan was forced to learn the ways of the West as far as the international politics is concerned. So two important incidents which I have taken. One is the advent of Matthew C. Perry. Matthew C. Perry came to Japan in 1853 and forced Japan to open its door. And that is how the Sakoku period of Japan, which ended for more than 250 years, finally came to an end. So after that, two treaties were signed with Western countries. One is primarily with the US, one is Kanagawa Treaty that was signed in 1854, and one is the Harris Treaty that was signed in 1858. One of the clauses of the treaty was the extraterritoriality clause, which maintained that if any foreign national is committing any crime on Japanese soil, he will be tried not in Japan, but in his or her own country. The person will be sent back to face the trial in his or her own country. And if we can speak in modern language of international politics, then it was a sheer violation of sovereignty of Japan, and Japan did not take it so well. It was disparaging, and Japan was very, very, uneasy about this extraterritorial clause. And after the Civil War ended with major restoration in 1868, the first mission that Japan sent to the West, the Iwakura mission, it had two important objectives. The first objective was to learn the ways of the West, of modernization, of empowerment. The second important objective was to do away with this extraterritoriality clause. Japan tried very hard. The mission debated, discussed everything, but the West was not ready to listen to Japan. And finally, the Iwakura mission failed as far as the doing away of extraterritoriality clause was concerned. The statesmen of Japan really thought very hard, and they learned that it's very important to become as powerful as the West if we need to be heard by those nations. And therefore, Japan focused all its energy on only empowerment, both ways. I'll explain it later that how both hard power and soft power, both of them were employed during Meiji period as well. The second important lesson was what we call triple intervention. In 1895, when Japan won the war with China and got a lot of indemnity from China, and also the ownership of Port Arthur. The Port Arthur was a very unique kind of port, and it was all-weather port and important from strategic as well as trade point of view. And the one port which was very important for Russia was Vladivostok, and that was only open for 6 months. And Russia was eyeing on that. These three countries intervened in the affairs, and they forced Japan to give it back to China. France, Russia, and Germany. Japan had no clue as to how to tackle these alliances. And therefore, later on, it had to return the Port Arthur, and that port went back to Russia on lease. This was too much for Japan to accept. And Japan learned the second lesson, that in today's world, in order to survive, we have to stitch alliances, forge alliances with big powers, and which later on it did with Britain in 1902. Japan came of age. Japan arrived at the stage of international arena with this alliance because Britain was considered one of the most important powers of the time. And therefore, we see that these two important lessons where power came right in the equation of Japan, that we have to follow this kind of pursuit, and a little bit, Kurotani story that followed after that. One more important aspect of this is, even in the modern Japan, contemporary Japan, the mainstay of Japanese strategy has been Yoshida doctrine. And Yoshida told it in one of the closed meetings that those who are opposing my doctrine, they are not wise enough, because we have to focus only and solely on our economic development and empowerment of Japan. Only then we can negotiate terms with the West. So Yoshida doctrine, as we know, that only economic empowerment was focused on, and the security went to the hands of the US. So we see that that lesson is still, followed by Japanese statesmen. I'll go to the next slide, and now the idea of soft power. Now I'll introduce the idea of soft power. This was coined. The term was coined by Joseph S. Nye, and he wrote a book with the very same title. But we have to understand that he's saying that it is not the muscle power or missile power or power to coerce any nation, but rather we should garner the power to attract, power to persuade people to your cause. And that is very important. But there is a flip side to this. What he is having in the mind is that you have to achieve your ends. Those ends may or may not be appreciated by the other party also, but you have to achieve it. So rather than twisting the arms, it is possible to twist the minds of the nations. And soft power is becoming a tool to achieve those ends. There is a historical background to it, this Rise and Fall of Great Powers. It was a book written by Paul Kennedy in which he showed that how the American power is waning and its decline is going to be sharp because it has reached its imperial overreach. And therefore, America has to reinvent its policies. The answer to that came with this work of Bound to Lead of Joseph S. Nye, in which he said that the American power is not going to diminish, and America has to only readjust its policies and include also soft power. But he did not stop here. Later on, after 10 years, he also produced another book called The Future of Power. In that, he has discussed both. He says that military power, muscle power can be a good starting point. Later on, it has to be substantiated by the soft power. And finally, we have to have a strange mix of these two, and he calls it the smart power. But overall idea behind this is to achieve the ends of America and to maintain its superpower status. Now, this is here where the Indian values, primarily the Buddhist values, come into play. And it says that it actually means the welfare of everyone, live and let live policy. And it's not that your hegemony at the expense of other nations. So we have to readjust this idea of soft power with the ideals of Buddhism. Now, what is the relevance of soft power? If you are going to couple this idea of soft power with Buddhism, it is going to be extremely important in order to keep the order of modern world. Why? Because we already know that there are many nations who have stockpiled so many nuclear weapons that we can destroy this beautiful planet multiple times. And this is what we call mutually assured destruction. If there is going to be any breakout of war, this is going to unleash unprecedented damage and destruction to humanity. And no one party is going to come out victorious. That victory would be Pyrrhic victory, if at all it will be. So it will spell the doom for humanity, and it is very important for all of us to learn from the incident of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is not only a lesson for a few nations, it is the nation for the whole humankind. We are still struggling from three important scourges of mankind, that is hunger, disease, and war. There are many people who are still suffering tremendously, and we have not yet been able to provide the solution. This is a question on the whole journey of our civilizational stride. We also have anthropogenic environmental destruction. We have not only endangered the humans, but also several species, eventually the Gaia, and those problems are man-made. And therefore, it is very important to include these Buddhist ideals into the all theoretical framework of international politics, because Buddhism offers an answer. Now, okay. So why Buddhism offers an answer, and what are its universal credentials? We know that Buddhism is, one of the ambassadors, he said that it is a religion of intellectuals, because it never defies reason. And that is why it has produced so many philosophers, in India, in China, in Japan, because of its intellectual vitality. It has grand philosophy, the doctrine of dependent origination, Shunyavad, Kshanikvad, Nityavad, Anatta, extinguishing of the self. And it's also very important from ethical point of view. The mainstay of Buddhism remains, as far as ethical dimension is concerned, is compassion and unison of beings. Live and let live, be good to others. The Bodhisattva ideology. For aesthetics, we know that Indian people are very imaginative and speculative in the early times, but now The aesthetic part was provided to Buddhism by Japan. Many of its elements that we study as the aesthetic elements of Buddhism, it developed in Japan. One such example is Mono no Aware, then Sakura philosophy, Yugen, Wabi Sabi. Well, I don't have much time to explain all these terms. Maybe later on if somebody will raise this, then I'll go into that. So its spiritual value is sublime satori, the sudden enlightenment, undiminished and undifferentiated awareness about things and seeing things in the true light. Its enduring values like ahimsa, nonviolence, compassion, live and let live, be a light unto yourself, open society and pluralism, annihilation of the idea of the other. This is very important from international point of view, because the moment we are having this idea of the other, we are looking at the other, looking at the nations from the point of view of they being the other, then this creates a kind of distinction between nations. And then our interests do not combine, do not converge. And that is why this Buddhist ideal of the annihilation of the idea of the other is very, very important. Now, Buddhism as an ideological soft power of India, we know that Buddha was born in India, and the rise of Buddhism took place from here. And it went both ways, one through Ceylon, then Southeast Asian nations, and then through Tibet, China, Korea, and finally Japan, and it prospered in all these countries. So it has a huge following as far as the practitioners are concerned, and also there's a great number of people who abide by the ideals of Buddhism. Therefore, it can be a great, great soft power for India to include all the elements of Buddhism in its foreign policies and bringing the nations together. It can be a great vehicle for Indian values. Now, for Japan, we know that Buddhism emerged as Zen, and it has a very specific place, not only in Japan, but also in West. The whole West has a romance with the Zen. And Zen is a very anti-philosophical, anti-intellectual kind of standpoint. But as we know that to be anti-philosophical is also expressing a philosophical standpoint. And this anti-intellectual stand of Zen became very, very popular. It had to express something mystical, the experience-wise, Satori, and all many such things. So it played a great role, and many writers, they authored a lot, many books around the Zen. It explains the idea like mind of no mind, attaining anatta, which we call muga. Satori, the ultimate objective of Zen, that is the emancipation, that is enlightenment, cessation of suffering of all kinds, not only for oneself, but also for others also. Another important thing is in Japanese context is the samurai ethics and the impact of Zen on that. Now, the influence of samurai has been great in Japanese history, starting from the Minamoto days till date, that how Zen influenced samurai ethics, that Zen provided them with a kind of a deterministic outlook, that if you have decided upon some course, then nothing should stop you or no barrier should come in the way. Generally, the samurais were to act against this fear of death, and Zen helped them conquer that fear. And that is why it also provided them a human side of warfare. It's not that you are just going and killing everybody. That compassionate aspect will always be there, and war will be waged only when no other options are left. So much so that even after Meiji Restoration, when the new army was conscripted, the ethics of that army was kept Bushido ideals, which included courage, chivalry, honor, and loyalty. So it has a great potential also for Japan. For cultural impact, the mainstay of Japan's soft power, we approach it like Mono no Aware, Ukashi, Wabi and Sabi, Mujo, Yugen. And its manifestation in real life is tea ceremony. In literature, it is haiku. In architecture, rock gardens, ikebana in flower arrangement and other aesthetic aspects, and also in sports like archery and sportsmanship. Now, Indo-Japan soft power and its efficacy. Now, why this is very important to project this power together. We know that India alone cannot do it, Japan alone cannot do it. If today we see a kind of order in Indo-Pacific, it is primarily because of these two countries. Otherwise, the hegemonic design of China was so aggressive that it would have, unleashed a kind of violence in the region. But these two countries, they complement each other so well. Historically, they are poised not only to help each other, but also to help the cause of peace and prosperity, not only for the region, but for the whole world. India can supply a lot to Japan, what Japan lacks, the genius of India, the labor force, and many other things, providing the pivot. And Japan can also in turn provide a lot many things to India. Its economic prowess, its management skills, its international linkages. There are many things that we can learn from each other. And therefore, it is very important not only to realize this, but also to project the power together. And therefore, these countries, India and Japan, they must come together. The power that these countries will project will not be aggressive, not having any intent of violence, but it would be rather a benign and yet formidable power. We say yes to peaceful survival and no to hegemony. We don't have any hegemonic design. India did not attack any country in its whole historical progression. Japan also after 1945 has shown great non-violent credentials, and it is promoting the cause of peace. And therefore, I believe it is very, very important for the two countries to come together for the cause of progress, prospect, and perpetual peace. One finally, what I call what nations should be very careful about. There is a very famous story, Kumo no Ito, in Japanese literature, which has a protagonist called Kandata. And I call this idea as Kandata syndrome for international politics. I hope George sir will explain maybe. Kandata was one person, and one day the story goes that Hotoke-sama, Osaka-sama, Buddha saw one person who was suffering in hell, and then he remembers that this man has committed one act of compassion by not killing one insect. And therefore, he thought he should be given a chance to survive. And then he extends a thread, a golden thread, and he holds it and tries to, come out of the hell, and maybe with good luck may enter into the paradise also. But after some time, when he saw that he's about to, come out of the hell, when he looked below, he saw that many people are coming through the same thread, and it was too much for them. He felt that the thread might be broken, and he started, pushing them. And the very moment the thread was broken, and it was the lesson is very clear that our survival is only possible when we can stand together. With this, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'll be very happy to take some questions if there would be any. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Dinamani. And I think you have, first of all, stick to the time given to you. That is one thing. Second, it was a wonderful presentation. However, of course, Japan and India, we are already in a very good, collaborative, partners, strategic partners. However, what I found is that, as you also mentioned, soft culture, partnership in sharing soft culture, that is still lacking. Now, soft culture doesn't mean only Buddhism or yoga, as we all know. Soft culture means literature, and then religion, then food habit, all this comes under soft culture. Now, the problem is that India, when we talk about Japan, majority of Indians, they don't have any idea about what is Japan, how the Japanese people think. No idea. Similarly, in Japan also, even now, although Japanese universities, a lot of researchers and a lot of studies going on Indian culture, Indian civilization, if you compare with India, Japan is far ahead in that field. However, still in Japan, they have that preconceived notion. Some of the common Japanese people, they don't know what is India. That is one thing. Second is regarding Buddhism. Although it is the birthplace was India, now you see we don't have any followers in India as far as Buddhism is concerned. And I don't know, we all feel that Buddhism should be made a bridge to connect Japan and India. However, will the common people in India agree to that? That is one thing which I might agree, you might agree, but whether others will agree or not, to bring Buddhism in the forefront. Okay, that is one thing which, and I think scholars like you should take the initiative to educate people in India that this is what we have to do. Without, proper understanding of the worldview, the thinking, thought process, etc., of both the people, it is not possible for us to progress in our partnership also. In the previous session, I think Ambassador Asrani pointed out that we make very wonderful, policies or joint declarations. But when it comes to implementation in India, we are lagging behind. We are slow, very slow. Why that is happening? Why it is very slow? As a scholar of Japanese studies, Japanese culture, I feel that the lagging comes because of lack of understanding of the cultural background of both the countries, right? Mutual lack of understanding. If you see how the Japanese studies flourished in Europe and America, we don't have to specially mention. What they did first was to introduce or translate most of the important Japanese works into European languages and English, and then give maximum importance to spreading of or teaching of Japanese language in those countries. And then they nurtured, they brought up scholars who could go into various fields of research as far as Japan is concerned. That's how the Japanese study or the understanding of Japan established in these countries. Whereas in India, I don't think, except those few scholars in Japanese studies or Japanese culture studies, other Indians, they are not much aware of Japanese culture. Even the diplomats and bureaucrats, we know that. So what is required is that our young scholars should take up various aspects of cultural aspects of Japan and India, do comparative studies, go into depth, to see how the Indo-Japan relations happened during the ancient or the pre-modern period. No research is done. We always say that Buddhism went to Japan through China, from India through China, Korea. That everybody is saying, but nobody is saying how. Nobody is putting any effort to find out what happened when after reaching Buddhism to Japan, how Indo-Japan relations flourished those days. No record is there. No record is there. We have to go to Chinese records for finding out how the Buddhism reached Japan and what was the role of Buddhism in Japan in the ancient time. We don't have any record. And I have mentioned many years ago in some presentation that it was all one way, one side interaction. Buddhism went to Japan, but those Buddhist monks, they never came back to India. So we were not aware of ancient Japan. We were not aware. So, but there were various interactions, directly or indirectly. For all this, we need, wide range of research and study. Then only we can establish. Like Janashrudi's paper also, same thing. Lot of study have to be done, which is not done by us. What we are doing is just learn the language and then literature. Some people do some research in literature, and area study only trade and diplomacy, international relations, nothing else. I have done a research, study last year for a paper on Japanese studies in India. I found that in DU and JNU, only one person each did research on Japanese history. And nobody has done research on religion, because these two universities are pioneers. So without doing diversifying the field of research, we cannot come with proof what was the condition of Indo-Japan relations during the pre-modern or the ancient period. There are a lot of interactions, I'm sure, but we have to do research. Anyway, I think we have to move to the next presenter. I would request Kawane Tomo-san to present her paper. Her paper is on volunteering, connecting people, volunteering, and vernacular dialogue. Kawane-san, どうぞよろしくお願いします。Unmute your mic, please. Kawane-san, unmute your mic.
Yes. Can you, will you be able to see my screen? Is it possible? Hello?
It is visible and it is, your voice is also audible. Please start.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for inviting me for this occasion. Today, I'd like to talk about connecting people, volunteering, and vernacular dialogue. So far, I have been hearing quite a lot of academic discourses on today's topic, but from my side, on culture, civilization, and people connect, I would like to share my own experience through my 30 years of my stay in India. And having studied in Indian universities, JNU and also MS University of Baroda, I think I will be able to have good connections with all the participants. Today's topic. First, I'd like to talk about my background. Then I would explain a little bit about my linguistic journey. Then I would like to make my point on why it is important to listen to the unknown. And as a conclusion, I'd like to summarize my observation on balancing on being the other and one of them. So coming to my background, I was born in Tokyo, and my father spent his youth in China as an administrative staff at South Manchurian Railway. So he grew up as a child in a remote village in Shikoku area. He was not born in Tokyo like me, and he wanted to study further, but his father just denied him to do so because he was the eldest of the family, eldest of the children, and was supposed to do his agricultural work. So this studying in China actually gave an opportunity to work for South Manchurian Railway. So without knowing, he actually decided to go there and realized that, okay, it was actually supporting the expansion of, this Japanese imperialism in China. And later on, he regretted. And he always talked to me about this story. So I grew up dreaming to go to China to understand what was happening behind the history. And so I decided to learn Chinese, and I was dreaming to see where he spent his turbulent late teens. However, in 1989, Tiananmen incident happened, and there was lots of uncertainty for me to travel to China. So I decided to travel to India instead to see Gujarat, because there was a plan to coordinate international walk from Sabarmati Ashram to Kirti Mandir, which lasted about 450 kilometers. So that Padayatra I participated, and that changed my life. I decided to study in India after I participated in that Padayatra. Then I joined the MA in International Studies at the CEAS JNU as an Indo-Japan Culture Exchange Scholar. I also later on served as an expert in People's Linguistic Survey of India. And at the same time, I stayed at Godavari Hostel at JNU. I polished my Hindi. And later on, I studied my MPhil in political science at the Maharaja Sajirao University of Baroda. and I surveyed voluntary sector in rural Gujarat. So looking back my 30 years of linguistic journey in India, Hindi, Gujarati, Japanese, English, these 4 languages have been equally important for me to carry on my studies, my work related to corporate, and also surveys related to funding the NGOs in India. I also have similar interest in learning German, Urdu, Bengali, and French, but most used languages are all these 4 languages. And what I'm talking about, my experience today, is based on these 4 languages. So to master these languages, I found the children of the best teachers if I would like to learn a language, because they are very curious and they repeat the new words and they do not mind try and error in speaking. But what I actually realized, vernacular language is most important is through Padayatra. Walking through villages, meeting people of various age groups and communities, I discovered that my English is not enough. And women are also not always accessible for open communication. So in order to... はい。
川根さん、スライドはまだ、スライドはね、最初のスライドのままです。動いていない。そうですか。
本当に？
はい。はい。
こっちだと動いてるんですけど。
最初のスライドのままです。
すいません。これだと動いてるんですけど、ごめんなさい。
画面には多分映っていない。
画面に映ってない？映
っているのは最初のスライドだけ。
これ、映ってますか？
これだけです、映っているのは。
次は映ってますか？これ映りますか？
いや、映らない。今映った。
じゃあこれでいきます。すいません。もう一回いきます。はい。すいません。OK。どこからいきましょう？
いや、もう、まだ止まってしまった。最初の
止まっちゃった。今最初戻りました。次です。これです。
はいはい。
いいですか？じゃあこれでいきます。はい。OK, sorry to, OK, just I quickly revise. So I'd like to talk about my background, linguistic journey, listening to the unknown, and as a conclusion, balancing of being the other and one of them. So about my background, I was born in Tokyo. My father spent his youth in China working for South Manchurian Railway, and he saw how the war was ended in Japan, and that repercussion actually came to China, and it was very difficult for him to be evacuated. And I used to grow up hearing his stories about his struggles in China. So I decided to go to China to understand what was happening around that time in history, and also started learning Chinese to see that the places which he spent his youth. But Tiananmen incident in 1989 happened, and I changed my destination and traveled to India to see Gujarat. At that time, Padayatra was organized between Sabarmati Ashram, which was a headquarters of independence movement for Mahatma Gandhi, and also to Kirti Mandir, the birthplace of Mahatma Gandhi. It went around 450 kilometers, and I walked with lots of participants from different countries and also local people. Then I learned that it is not always easy to communicate with people with my English knowledge. So later on, I joined the MA in International Studies at the CEAS as an Indo-Japan Cultural Exchange Scholar. And I also stayed at Godavari Hostel and polished my Hindi. And later on, I joined as an expert in People's Linguistic Survey of India. And also, I joined MPhil in Political Science at the Maharaja Sarojini University of Baroda, surveyed voluntary sector in rural Gujarat. So looking back my 30 years of my linguistic journey in India, Hindi, Gujarati, Japanese, English, these 4 languages have given me lots of opportunities to study on India, to survey on India for Japanese agencies as well as Indian institutions. I also learned German, French, Urdu, and Bengali, but Hindi, Gujarati, Japanese, English remained as my major focus. So to learn new languages, I usually requested children to be around so that children will be able to let me understand the new words, and also since they do not mind try and error in speaking, I was very much helped by children, especially in India. So Padayatra is considered as a means of like communicating people, understanding the reality of the situation. So that actually helped me to know more about India, and walking through villages, meeting people of various age groups and communities. And that made me realize that English is not enough. And also, I also realized that women are not always accessible for open communication. So if you go to the village, it is often, it often happens that the women and men are separately seated, and not always women are encouraged to speak or forthcoming to speak. So if I wanted to understand more about India, I thought vernacular language is important. That had become a big motive for me to learn these Indian languages. And also, if you go to rural areas, such kind of common scenes are there, and you will always see that the important men are seated and also requested to be present to share the opinion or give ideas about what's going to happen in the village. So actually, through this experience, I had an opportunity to work for relief and rehabilitation reconstruction in post-Gujarat earthquake in 2000, after 2001 for about 4 years. And I engaged myself with local coordination of the visit of doctors and nurses of Japan Disaster Relief Team to Ahmedabad hospitals, and also supported by the director of the Japan Foundation New Delhi, who was from Kobe. He himself was a volunteer, and he called me regularly in the morning and in the evening to coordinate with NHK Volunteer Network. So we received 53 Japanese volunteers in Kutch. And I also managed orthopedic relief camp for more than 6,000 patients in Kutch. And at the same time, for about 4 years, I organized basic education centers for 700 quake-affected children aged 6 to 14. And I also took part in the survey of damaged historical monuments and hearing of affected communities. So all these actually helped me to understand much better about the local situation with the use of vernacular languages. I had an opportunity to present on the earthquake relief work at Japanese Association New Delhi in 2001. That actually was a great honor, and also I was very happy that the people were very sincere and curious, and also concerned about the earthquake victims in Gujarat. So that was also a kind of gala organized by Japanese Association with a designer, Ritu Veri, for raising fund for Prime Minister's Fund. So back to Gujarat, with the support of Embassy of Japan, New Delhi, we helped quake-affected families by offering temporary shelter project. And we offered around 610 such temporary shelters that actually have been used for semi-temporary shelter even after this by attaching walls and also roofs on their own. So these are some of the photographs. So this is possible to be even built with the help of children with both and net. Here is my daughter also. She also participated in building the tents. Temporary shelter project also supported some shelter project for basic learning for local children. So this is a tent village. So looking back, what I have seen and what I have experienced, there are some key learnings through vernacular dialogues. To whom to talk? So if you say that, okay, this is a reality of the situation, and these are the facts, who said that? And those realities and facts are viewed by whom? These points need to be looked after, because there are always some rooms of interpretations. And if you go to various places of India, probably a remote area, and especially in rural areas, it is easy to get more information in vernacular languages. And it also happens if you seek for some interpretation in English, it may not be always reflecting the reality of the situation. So what matters is who hears, when, and how. And vernacular communication, if you may be able to handle very well, then it is quite possible to get good participation of local people, because local people consider that you are seriously interested in being part of their work, society, community, to be able to help them. And it is possible to think about workable solutions with available community resources. So it is quite easy to plan for inclusive development, which are all within the reach of people. So when the project is owned by the local people, the local participation of more volunteers could be possible. And especially for disaster volunteering, more effective it will become with local inputs and local languages. Why it is so? It will help us to avoid duplication of the relief works. And also international coordination teams will be able to work much better. And also local coordination with NGOs and local administration could be possible. And existing local resource persons, infrastructures, community network, medical fraternity, all these come in handy. And enormous workloads and challenges for local administration that could be eased. And also mobilization of resources, manpower, food, vehicles, relief materials that will become more effective. And more important thing is handling the sentiment of the volunteers well could be possible. So I think there are some keywords which I have learned from this experience. One is most important thing is information sharing, not just with the people who can speak English, but with the people who can only speak vernacular languages, so that we are able to get full support from the communities. And capacity building is only possible through vernacular languages in most of the cases if the community does not have the capacity to handle communication and also learning in English. And third, local knowledge and experience can be utilized maximum with the help of vernacular languages. So hereafter, I'd like to show some photographs where I could use my skills in languages. In 2020, just before the pandemic, we could organize the event called India Meets Japan at IIT Gandhinagar and Ahmedabad University and some other educational institutions. And with the help of Japan Foundation and also two members of Discover India Club, we could organize Ramayana screening in Gujarat in 2020, and we could invite this animator, Megumu Ishiguro-san from Japan. And during the COVID pandemic relief time, we could organize COVID-19 pandemic relief thanks to Japanese curry restaurants. Around more than 50 curry restaurants participated in crowdfunding and raised the fund for supporting the widows in Gujarat. So we have distributed some blankets as well as sanitary items for the ladies who are living alone. And it was actually a good occasion for them to get together, even though it was a COVID time, because they are one of the, very neglected groups in the society during the COVID time. And apart from that, we also offered study materials and stationery to the children in remote villages by the ambulance, especially to the girl children who are not able to come to the schools. And also we discussed with family members to explain that why it is important for them to consider their girls to study. So talking about the vernacular dialogue, even your presence is a part of dialogue for future. This is what I felt. Who cared about the child, why it is important to study, whether the child studies well, and how to support the child from now on. These are the topics which we discussed with the family members. So a small action like offering stationeries or textbooks leading to the continuous support within various families of the supported children. And we are aiming to generate such support within the family of the children that will secure their future. So now school is open and children are back to school. This is one of the most recent photographs. So looking at this, balancing of being the other and one of them could be one important point for the self-help of volunteers, because by taking the help of locals, sometimes, your good deed or good wishes can be misused. But to be fair and to be part of the community while doing volunteering in the community is quite important. So it is always good to be sensitive to the importance of vernacular communication. Thank you so much. So this is my very brief sharing about my experience, and I hope that would inspire more people to learn languages and engage with local people. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Kawane-san. I think your presentation, directly or indirectly, expresses that wish that learning language is most important for any kind of regional or area studies, and also to understand or to create generosity. That how the feeling, how you feel for others, that can be properly conveyed only through the language of that listener or the people who listen to you. Similarly, in academics also, I always have been emphasizing this point, that for Japanese studies, we have to also learn Japanese language because that will give much better understanding of the country, of the culture of the Japanese people. Similarly, as you have experienced, you know Gujarati and you talk to the people in Gujarati. So the reactions, the support you must have got from the local people there must have been much better than speaking in English to them. You know? And then understanding the local culture, local situation, and circumstances it will be better when you are able to converse in the language of that locality. So this is same applicable to any kind of area studies or culture studies. Knowing the language of the country concerned is very important for understanding, better than, indirectly understanding the culture or the the outlook of the people concerned. So it was a wonderful presentation. I think Kawana-san, during her 30 years of living for India, has created enormous goodwill among Indians, and also she would have got a lot of satisfaction what she has done. Thank you, Kawana-san. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much.
Then we will have the last presentation today, although we are running slightly behind schedule. May I now request Professor Geeta Kini to present her paper. Her paper is Shantiniketan as a stage of Indo-Pacific cultural and intellectual exchanges. Professor Kini, please start your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, George Sensei. And a very good afternoon to all of you. Can you see my slide? Is the slide visible?
Yes. Can.
And I'm audible.
Slide is visible and your voice is also audible.
Audible. Okay. Then very good afternoon. As the 70th year of bilateral relations between India and Japan is being observed with great zeal, it gives me immense pleasure to reflect on the cultural and intellectual exchange between the countries over the past centuries that flourished in the rural setup of Shantiniketan. The slides are moving, right? Is the slides moving? I am on the second slide now.
No, it isn't.
No, it is not moving.
Yeah, I think if you put it on full screen, it becomes easier to move.
Okay.
In the bottom end, if you see, there is a, now it's moved.
Now it's moving? Okay, yeah. So I go back to the second slide. Okay, I will switch off my video so that there is no problem in my while I'm presenting. And yeah. Okay, so I go back to my presentation. Yeah, this is from this, yeah. The cultural relations between the two countries can be traced back to the 6th century with the introduction of Buddhism to Japan through China and Korea. The presence of a number of Indian deities in Japan, for example, Benzaiten, Saraswati, Bishamanten, Kubera, and Daikokuten, Mahakal, as 3 deities among Shichifukujin, the 7 lucky deities, is also observed. This reminds one of the renowned Indologist Nakamura Hajime's words, "Without Indian influence, Japanese culture would not be what it is today." Today's presentation will focus on the people-to-people contact that was revitalized between Meiji Japan and British India, which emerged with the historical meeting between Tenshin Okakura, the art critic and proponent of Asia is One, and poet Rabindranath Tagore, who set up a Brahmo Vidyalaya where he envisioned to educate the young minds in ancient India's Tapovana model. Needless to say, this meeting worked as an impetus in harboring the cultural relationship with immediate effect. Shitoku Hori, who came to India with Okakura Tenshin, joined the Brahmo Vidyalaya to learn Sanskrit on Okakura's recommendation, and Tagore was elated about Hori's joining. Tagore and Acharya Jagadish Chandra Bose, a famous scientist, deliberated on the possibility of recovering Buddhist manuscripts that were present in places outside India with the help of persons like Hori. While the historic meeting resulted in Hori becoming the first foreign student, it also led to the expansion of interaction between the artists of both the countries, thereby enriching the arena of fine arts. Okakura sent distinguished artists like Taikan Yokoyama and Shinsho Hishida to India on Tagore's request, and their visits facilitated the introduction of Japanese wash and ink painting sumi to the Indian artist. At the same time, Taikan Yokoyama and Shunsho Hishida learned the techniques of Indian miniature paintings from Abanindranath, Tagore's nephew. The enthusiasm to explore each other's cultural domain was further deepened when, on Tagore's request, Okakura sent Jinnosuke Sano to Shantiniketan in 1905 to teach jujutsu. In the photo, we can see Sano sitting with Rothindranath, Tagore's eldest son, in judo attire, standing on his left. From Sano's account, Tagoru sensei to watashi, one understands Tagore's eagerness for Japanese language learning at Shantiniketan, as he selected students to learn the language prior to Sano's arrival. Moreover, when Sano tried to teach Japanese using Roman scripts, Tagore suggested that the language should be taught using Japanese characters. Shomindranath, Tagore's younger son, was one among the students who learned Japanese from Sano. Though informally, this led to the inception of Japanese language teaching learning activities in the first decade of the 20th century in undivided Bengal at Shantiniketan, and may be considered as significant leap forward in the history of the development of Japanese language teaching in India. Sano's contributions towards establishing the India-Japan relationship was twofold. While he taught the language and the martial art to the people of Brahmo Vidyalaya, he also wrote several essays on India and translated a few representative works of Bengali literature into Japanese. Thus, we find that Tagore's eagerness to introduce Japan and her culture in Shantiniketan not only brought Japan to us, but also resulted in Bengali literature and various facets of India, Bengal, to travel to Japan. Tagore's maiden visit to Japan in 1916 further strengthened the relationship with Japan. In his travelogue Japan Jatri and the letters that he wrote to different people, he mentioned different aspects of Japanese people, such as their lifestyle, culture, love for nature, aesthetic sense, and their philosophy, which he learned through direct interaction and experiences with Japanese people and their culture. Tagore was greatly impressed by the works of Japanese artists, and on Tagore's request, a duplicate of artist Shimomura Kanzan's famous painting titled Yoroboshi, The Weak Bones, based on a classical no drama made by Arai Kampo, was presented to him, which is preserved in the archives of Kalabhavana, the Institute of Fine Arts and Crafts at Vishwabharati. Tagore's eagerness to create a conducive interactive environment for the artists of both the countries prompted him to invite Arai Kampo to India in 1916. This interaction enriched each other, and Tagore's appreciation is beautifully recorded in the adieu poem that he composed on a silk cloth and presented to Kampo before his departure to Japan on May 1918. The poem goes, the English translation is, one day you came to my home like a guest. Today, at the time of leaving, you have come to my heart. In 1920s, Vishwabharati received the Kintaro Kasahara family in Sriniketan, the second campus of Vishwabharati, where Kasahara taught woodcraft. One of Tagore's residences, Uttarayana, bears the impact of his artistic skills. Kasahara constructed a wooden house on 3 peepal trees in Sriniketan, which was loved by Tagore, and he is said to have composed a number of poems in this house. Kasahara's eldest daughter, Itsuko, was named Shagorika by Tagore and married Dhirananda Roy, director of Sriniketan. Tagore's 5 visits to Japan reflects how the country held a special place in his heart. During his final visit in 1929, he was hosted by Kunihiko Okura, a friend of Rashbihari Bose and a proponent of Oriental culture in Japan. Tagore requested Okura for a jujutsu teacher and additionally expressed his desire to have instructors of tea ceremony and ikebana, the art of flower arrangement. Honoring Tagore's request, Okura recommended Shinzo Takagaki, a renowned figure in judo, for Shantiniketan, and Takagaki arrived in Shantiniketan in 1929. Female students were also a part of Takagaki's judo classes, which was a rare occurrence in those days. Tagore composed the song Shankochero Bivalata Nijero Apoman. Shying away in hesitation is self-humiliation, and presented it to Takagaki. The song was sung during a judo demonstration by students of Shantiniketan at the New Imperial Theatre at Kolkata on 16th March in 1931 in Tagore's presence. If we shift focus to other art forms that emerged during this period, we learn about Rashbihari Bose's sister-in-law, Makiko Hoshi, who came to Shantiniketan in 1930 with Takagaki's wife and taught ikebana and tea ceremony during her stay. The sequence of events enlightens us on the ways in which the historic meeting between Okakura and Tagore took forward the age-old relationship established through Buddhism in the ancient times to intellectual and cultural levels, expanding across the spheres of fine arts, martial arts, woodcraft, ikebana, tea ceremony, Japanese language teaching, learning, and so on. Takagaki's stay at Shantiniketan was followed by a number of Japanese people visiting Shantiniketan with the aim of fulfilling their academic, cultural, and personal interests. Reverend Susho Byodo, a Buddhist scholar who studied Sanskrit Alankar Shastra at Shantiniketan in 1933-34, needs special mention with regard to the academic and cultural relation that flourished in the later days. It is known that Tagore requested Reverend Byodo to explore the possibilities of establishing a Japani Bhavan at Shantiniketan, as the talks of establishment of China Bhavana was on at that time. Before his demise in 1941, Tagore wrote a letter to Mahatma Gandhi in which he described Vishwabharati as a vessel which is carrying the cargo of my life's best treasure, and I hope it may claim special care from my countrymen for its preservation. Gandhiji made a request to Jawaharlal Nehru to protect the unique institution, and his efforts saw light in May 1951 when Vishwabharati was declared a central university and an institute of national importance by the Act of Parliament. The Japanese department at Vishwabharati was established in 1954 and became the first formal center of Japanese learning in the country. From its very inception, the department was housed in China Bhavana, and the classes were often held in the lawn of China Bhavana. Many eminent Japanese scholars praised the department as faculty members and contributed towards nurturing the department while teaching Japanese language, culture, and Buddhist philosophy. The first Indian faculty member was recruited in March 1985. I wish to state that Professor Satyabhushan Verma, who established the Japanese department in JNU, learned Japanese at Vishwabharati under Kasugai Sensei, the first teacher of the Japanese department in Vishwabharati. With the active initiative of Professor Kazuo Azuma, the foundation stone of Nippon Bhavana was laid in 1991 by Reverend Byodo, respecting Tagore's wish that was made in 1934. Nippon Bhavana was inaugurated on February 3rd, 1994 by Sri K.R. Narayanan, the then Honorable Vice President of India, fulfilling Tagore's dream. With this started the third, we come to the third wave in the having a roof of its own provided an impetus to the academic activities of the department. Teaching activities of the department expanded from certificate and diploma courses to undergraduate and postgraduate courses in Japanese, followed by doctoral program consisting of research students conducting research on various fields of Japanese studies. During this journey, the department had support from Japan Foundation, the Japan Overseas Cooperation Volunteer Teachers of Japan International Cooperation Agency, and the diplomatic missions of Japan in India. Research activities of the department are supported by Japan Foundation through visiting professorship programs and fellowship programs. Universities with whom we have memorandum of understanding also play a significant role by accepting our students to carry out work under their university system. Vishwabharati is the only institution till date in the eastern region of India to offer undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral programs, and students from different parts of India and neighboring countries join the department. Since 2015, the department is recognized as one of the centers for conducting the Japanese language proficiency test, which has been successfully conducted with kind cooperation of the Japan Foundation and the Consulate General of Japan in Kolkata. This immensely benefits our students as well as Japanese language learners of the surrounding areas, enabling them to go for higher studies or to procure employment. In 2016, the department introduced the teachers training program with kind support of the language advisors of Japan Foundation in India. And in 2019, the Japanese language teachers training program taken up under the Ministry of External Affairs and the Embassy of Japan in India was organized by the department with the full support of the Japan Foundation. A retrospection to the journey of the department shows strong and constant interaction with Japanese people and the academic institutions in Japan, providing opportunities to our students to acquaint themselves with young people of Japan. The yearly visit of Chikushi Jogakuen University to our campus since 1991 was an event to look forward to, as it presented our students with the opportunity to actively interact with students from Japan. The scope of interactions further expanded as we signed Memorandum of Understanding with a few Japanese universities since 2015. As a result of the Memorandum of Understanding on the occasion of Tagore's maiden visit to Japan, an international conference on Tagore and Japan was organized in August 2016 as a prime part of the year-long centenary celebration in collaboration with the Reitaku University and kind support of the Japan Foundation. Several foreign and Indian delegates attended this conference and enriched the intellectual exchange. Our endeavors received due recognition by the then Ambassador of Japan to India, His Excellency Kenji Hiramatsu, who visited our campus in January 2016. The department also strives to organize events for introducing various facets of Japanese culture to the students of Vishwabharati and the dwellers of Shantiniketan. The India-Japan Friendship Year 2017 was observed through a calligraphy workshop and a film show. Students from Kalabhavana, Institute of Fine Arts and Crafts, participated in the workshop along with our students. On the occasion of the centenary year of the establishment of Kala Bhavana, our program was organized with a tea ceremony at Rabindra Bhavan, an exhibition at Kala Bhavana, and a performance of Kotsuzumi by Ohura Genjiro, the living national treasure of Japan. The journey that started 120 years ago with the historic meeting of Okakura and Tagore, followed by Hori's joining the Brahma Vidyalaya, is still continuing. While the Adu poem Tagore composed is addressed to Kampo, it may be extended to all those who contributed to strengthening the relationship over the decades. The poem was later inscribed on the Tagore Kampo Memorial Stone, which was inaugurated on March 3rd, 1997 at the Nippon Bhavana premises. We are determined to take our founders' wish forward with the kind support from all to create a conducive atmosphere for research and cultural understanding, thereby strengthening the relationship and making Shantiniketan a place where the world meets in a single nest. Yatra Vishwam Bhavate Eka Needam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Geetakini. Actually, we have already crossed the allowed time. So,
George Sensei, I think let's take a few questions. It's very unfair on the floor.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
A large number of people.
How many minutes extra we can have?
You can take as much minutes because it's the last session of the day. It's only
okay.
in between.
So first of all, let me thank Dr. Professor Geetakini for the wonderful introduction of history of Japanese language teaching, along with the relations of Tagore and other dignitaries from Japan right from the beginning of 20th century. And Vishwavardi is in a way, you can say, cradle of Japanese language and culture in India. Much before JNU or DU started Japanese, they had already Japanese courses and courses on Japanese art and culture. So thank you very much for the wonderful paper. Now I invite questions. Maybe you can raise your hand.
Yeah, that is the mode we are following.
Yeah. So we will have around 10 to 15 minutes for question and answer session.
We have already Abgyan Guha. Could you please unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
my question is for Dr. Dinamani. In recent years, the creeping assertiveness of a belligerent China has emboldened the notion of sharp power in international relations. So do you still consider the Indo-Japan conviviality vis-a-vis the soft power apparatus as a cogent counter-hegemonic democratic deterrent to the Chinese posturing in the Indo-Pacific?
Okay, so should I take the questions, sir, or we have to first of all consider all the questions?
No,
or should I answer?
Better you answer this one.
Okay,
better you answer this one.
Okay, again, thank you very much for your question, and if that's a very opportune question, I believe. My answer to your question is that, like what Joseph Nye has said in his, idea of soft power, that soft power alone is not going to provide any kind of deterrence to any rising power like China. If you look at the realist school, primarily the Mearsheimer, who has given the idea of offensive realism, he goes on to say and claim that rise of China will never be peaceful. So only soft power strategy is not going to work. We know that China has a very aggressive design and it is implementing it. And it is also using Buddhism and Confucianism, opening all kinds of institutions everywhere just to, spread its footprint. But we cannot tackle China only on the basis of soft power. We have to come together, use soft power as the starting point, and also build, military relationship, not because we are becoming offensive to anybody or belligerent to anybody, but we have to strike a balance. the balance of power has to be there. So the notion of realism is going to play out. And as you can see that initially China was going everywhere, all the artificial.
Dinamani, we lost you.
There is some internet problem, I think. Dinamani is.
Yeah.
Shall we
move to the next
go to the next question? I think Ritam Fashricha is there. So can you ask your question? Ritam, you unmute your mic. Unmute.
My question is to you, sir, Mr. P.A. George. I'm not a student of JNU. I have no nothing in relation to JNU. I'm just purely attending this conference out of sheer interest, because I am like a trailing spouse to my husband, who came to Japan 22 years ago, and I have been mainly involved in raising kids and housework. And recently, about 7 years ago, I started teaching English as a corporate training instructor. I'm teaching English in different Japanese organizations. So, but out of my own personal interest, I started learning Japanese, and I did Japanese like JLPT N1 mainly on my own by and I'm really interested in Japanese literature, and I've started reading Japanese literature in Japanese. And I'm wondering, and I know that you've done a lot of research on Kenji Miyazawa.
Yeah.
So I'm also interested in Kenji Miyazawa. I was wondering, what is the scope of translation of Japanese literature into Hindi? Because many of the Japanese literature have been translated into English, but I don't think so there is a translation in Hindi. So what is the scope and how do you get into it? It's just an aspiration,
I understood your question.
Yeah.
First of all, the problem in India is that no publisher is ready to publish translated works from Japanese to Indian languages. However, some of the languages like Bengali, Malayalam, etc., Marathi also, there are publishers who come forward to publish. Of course, they get some financial grant from Japan Foundation. Without Japan Foundation's help, it is almost not possible in other languages also. In Hindi, of course, Professor Vinita Sachidanand and some other young scholars of Japanese cultural studies, they are translated and published. But Hindi being the largest language, official language in India, there should have been much more publications, translation and publication of Japanese literature, which is not done. So that's a very sad aspect. I think Gita Sensei also will agree with me in that point. So now I think first thing is, if you are planning to, and Miyazawa Kenji, mainly I have translated into Malayalam and Indian English. Gita Sensei also translated them into Bengali. There are many stories in Bengali also, Miyazawa Kenji. And the readership in Malayalam, I don't know about Bengali. Malayalam is very, highly satisfactory, because if you bring out around 2,000 copies, it is sold out in within 6 months. So I think that is Indian standard. That is a very, high rate. Bengali, I don't know how the readership is. And so if you are planning to do it, Kenji has got a good
foundation
readership in Malayalam, and he has got good readership in Bengali also. So I think he should have good readership in Hindi also. So you can try it out, and then you have to find out some publisher who is willing to publish it, and also approach Japan Foundation for some aid, support for getting publishing grant. So that is a very advantage. Yeah, is it okay?
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Now, any other question?
Tunia has a question. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Please ask your question.
Thank you, first of all, to everyone. It was very insightful. And I think since yesterday, we've been hearing about people-to-people connect, and being a Japanese student with very and absolutely at the point no knowledge about Japanese language, I think it's a bit embarrassing. So at this point, I think it's time for everyone to start learning the language. I have a question for actually Dr. Janashruti and for Dr. Dinamani as well. First of all, my question to Dr. Janashruti. Ma'am, you talked about, and we've been hearing about the similarities and trends about connections between the Japanese language and the Dravidian language, and time and again it has been brought out. Now my question has no factual evidence, it's just something I've been observing for quite some time. So I belong to this tribe called Nishi in Arunachal Pradesh, and like I said, no, there's no factual evidence, but I cannot help but observe certain similarities. Like taro is very common in Japan, and likewise, it's very common it's a very prominent clan in my community as well. So, is there any studies done on language similarities in any community of Northeast India, or is it just my speculation and it's just mere coincidence? So that's my question to Dr. Janashruti, actually.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute.
My presentation today was only about language linkages, but obviously, Northeast would have a lot of food similarities and maybe even cultural similarities, tradition, festival, rituals. One of our students from CJS, last batch pass out, Kago Lucy, I think she was I'm really forgetting the names. I mean, I have not taught that batch, but somebody talked about, natto. There was somebody who talked about, this food cultural similarities. So yes, similarities can be there from food also. These days, even this so-called, what do you call it, gastro-diplomacy is also in vogue. But even at language level, even at linguistic level, whenever I come across people from that region of which we know so little, I do ask my students to think of their mother tongue and comparing the language. We've not yet had the opportunity to teach somebody from Arunachal Pradesh. So would love to hear from you also first.
Thank you so much. I think I just got a new area to maybe do
Actually,
research.
This student,
Sir, can I ask my second question?
No. What I was saying, the student of CJS has done a comparative study of natto. Natto is actually fermented beans, soya bean. And in Nagaland, they have exactly same food, which is very similar to natto. So this is one thing which you can go for, further research. Please ask your next question, please.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I'll just be asking very short again. So my second question is for Dr. Dinamani. I once told by one professor, I apologize, I forget the name. A Japanese is born as a Buddhist, marries as a Christian, and dies as a Shinto. And in a country where people are not very religious, and in India, we are the land of 1,000 gods. So how do you suggest that, with Buddhism, your entire presentation on connecting Buddhism, do you think of its relevance today, or just want to hear your thought on that?
Okay, so a very good question, kind of complex, but I'll try to answer this question. I think George Sense also raised this in his observation after my presentation, that reviving Buddhism is not going to take the course as if you are going to find followers. The answer to that is to build onto the values. There are certain Buddhist values, Shinto values, If today, if you are looking at the problem of environment, no other religion provides such a robust solution to environmental problems than Shinto. You know, if you go to Japan, you will see a very small shrine, even in the city like Tokyo, and there are many of them. And around that shrine, you have a small thicket that is called Chinju no Mori. That's the Shinto terminology. That's a very small woods around that shrine, and in the precinct, the greenery is there, and its purity is well preserved. In Shinto, the belief is they do not believe in any other kind of duality. They believe only purity and pollution. Your right, wrong, good, bad, corrupt, uncorrupt, all this is divided in these two categories. Either you are pure or impure. So the focus on purity and then extending it to the environmental things, because the whole environment is considered as the manifestation of Kami, the gods and goddesses. So every aspect, as animism maintains, is sacred, and therefore it has to be respected. So what I'm saying that, like you said, all religions have played their part in Japan. And I always say that in order to understand the culture of Japan, the good beginning would be to understand these primarily the influences of these religions. First of all, Shinto, that is the indigenous religion of Japan, then Buddhism, then the continental influences like Taoism, Confucianism, these religions, and finally Christianity and its values. So in order to comprehend Japan on the whole, it is imperative to understand the values of these religions. Today, Christianity is not having such a following in Japan, but the values are there. Buddhism also, like I said, that India today, even if you don't have many followers of Buddhism, but those ideals live on. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam cannot be separated from the idea of live and let live. It is one and the same, and therefore I believe that rather than finding the followers, it would be better if we can, foster and further the values of these religions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dindamani.
Another question from Mr. J. Manier. To all the panelists and also moderators, he has written, what are some of the concrete steps which can be taken by India and Japan to improve people-to-people contacts, deepen the just 1 minute. Deepen the cultural, sorry, that going somewhere else.
To deepen the cultural understanding between the two countries.
Okay. So this is from Mr. Manier. I think maybe any of the panelists would like to comment on this, first of all, or should I say something, or maybe Professor Shravani?
No, it's your session, so one of you can take up the question. No
yeah, okay, then I will just, what I think, what I feel, I can just explain here. If you see the history of Japanese studies in Europe and America, and then, how the relationship of Japan and European countries or America became, strong and solid. Maybe not that much now. Now the Chinese studies have taken that position. However, my understanding is that European countries and America, they have, first of all, started teaching Japanese language on a large scale. That is one thing. Second, they had spent a lot of time and money for translating Japanese literature and books which are related to Japanese culture, and then gave wide publicity. And once that was done, lot of people shown interest in knowing more about Japan. And they have taken up the study of Japanese language as well as area studies in these countries. It is, of course, 20th century. When it comes to 21st century, the traditional, traditional cultural aspects of Japan was replaced by the soft culture. Now, I don't know whether you believe it or not, some of the American universities, they have courses on the modern soft culture of Japan, like anime, manga, etc. And for that, before these courses were introduced in universities there, what they did, they have translated all the popular, famous anime and manga into their languages. Now, if you take Europe, France is #1 in that case. It was told that the income from manga and anime is much more than the income, in France than the income they get in Japan. So France, you can just imagine the quantity of translations they make to popularize Japanese soft culture in France. Then Germany is also saying, America is already in the forefront, introducing courses on Japanese soft culture. And China, Korea. Now, soft culture has made a large contribution, a great contribution in these two countries of East Asia to forget about the atrocities they had to face during the Second World War. And through this soft culture, Japan won the hearts of Japanese, Koreans and Chinese. You can say that way. And they know, how many Chinese study Japanese? In millions. In the forenoon, one of the, I think Asraniji or somebody was saying, I think, so no. The present Japanese ambassador, Indian ambassador to Japan, Mr. Mishra, was saying that as on today, around 30,000, 35,000 people, 30,000 people are studying Japanese or attended the Noryokushiken, the proficiency test. But that is just a drop if you compare with China, if you compare with Korea. It's a drop only. So we have a population of how many crores? 120 crores. Out of that, only 30,000, 34,000, according to Japan Foundation's survey of 2018, only 34,000 Indians study Japanese language in India. It is nothing. It's nothing. So how can you say that people-to-people interaction is going on in a high level? No, it is not going. It is not going on. When diplomats and bureaucrats say that, I always disagree with them. It is not going on. Last 2 years ago, before the pandemic started, India government sent notices to all the universities saying that you start Japanese language courses. To us also, okay. We have already established departments. Then we, as a follow-up, we contacted the concerned officers in the ministry. They said that we don't have any fund. You start courses, but from where universities bring fund? So this is the situation in India now. So I think, although we say high-fi things, saying that Indo-Japan relationship is going in a very strong manner, it is not that. And that is why the policies or the declarations made by both the countries not being implemented immediately. It is not possible because both the sides do not understand each other. They don't understand. So it is not happening. That is what, so my opinion is that government of India and government of Japan, they should give, if they want a much stronger, closer relationship, first of all, they have to focus on giving special, education to both the people of both the countries, focusing on the cultures or the languages. Of course, in India, it is very difficult. Indian languages, there are 22 official languages. So Japan may not be able to focus on all the 22 official languages. But Japan can focus on at least the 6 classical languages in India, which are, we all know, apart from Hindi and 6 classical languages in India. That will cover what is the maximum population of India. And if that is done, they will, like Kavane-san's presentation, she said that she knew Gujarati, so she could understand the local people there. If you don't understand Tamil, how can you understand the Tamil culture? Because Tamil culture is entirely different from Hindi culture or Bengali culture. So that is a difficult situation we have in India. But as far as Japan is concerned, it has only one national language. So for Indians, learning Japanese in a large scale is much easier because we don't have to learn the slangs or the various regional variations of the language. We have to learn the standard Japanese language. So it's very easy for India to, teach Japanese language and make Indians more aware of Japanese culture, Japanese society, the outlook of Japanese people. It is easy for India to do. Only thing is that you should spend some money for that. Otherwise, it is not possible. Private agencies cannot spend. Now, recently, the skilled workers, being recruited to work in Japan, they have to undergo training in Japanese language. It is being done, but not in universities. It is done by private parties. And you don't know what is the level of language they impart to the probable candidates who will be recruited to work in Japan. So my opinion, people to people interaction or that understanding of culture of both the countries mutually, that is the only one possible way to overcome this problem. Otherwise, you can verbally say that India-Japan, India has, sent Buddhism to Japan, and we are having a relationship or interactions right from the 6th century. We all say that, but that is meaningless. That is meaningless. Now we have to see how to understand each other, how to get away with the preconceived notions. That is very important. And I feel this is what the only solution available. Now other panel members can also add. Dinamani wants to say something?
Yes. I mean, like you said that we have to cover a lot of ground. The good work has started and the two countries are really working together. But like you said that we have to cover a lot of ground. Only 34,000 people learning Japanese in India is nothing but a drop in the ocean. And we also know that those who learn Japanese, they are going to be recruited in good jobs and they can really make, lucrative job, get a good salary, and still this is not happening. If you look at the number of engineers, they do not make that much money, but still they are, a lot in numbers. Somewhere this awareness is also not there. So I think this is also the responsibility of we academics, and maybe in some joint work with Japan Foundation and Embassy, we should take up it and we should create a kind of awareness that Japanese language learning provides you with almost everything. Recognition, good job and everything, and still why this interest is not there. One example can be American example, how this people to people connect between Americans and Japanese becomes so strong and robust. When Japan grew as an economic power, Americans were the first one who started learning a lot about Japan. Many people learn Japanese language. They try to learn the culture of Japan. what is it, why Japan is, innovating in such a great scale. So they were wary of Japan, but somehow we did not start it then. And we should not forget that unlike America, we were colonial nations like Japan also and India also. So there is a kind of disconnect from the past. And I believe that the Buddhist tradition is very, very important to start with, but we have to cement our economic ties so that many and many people will be interested in Indo-Japan affairs. And I really congratulate, Kawani-san, she is kind of a polyglot. She can speak not only Japanese, but many Indian languages as well. People like you, we need in India, those who can, be a part of this dissemination of awareness about Japan. So I believe, yes, we have to cover a lot of ground, and it also leaves a lot of task for us. Thank you.
May I just interrupt? Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, going back to myself, try to become a polyglot. I tried to become a part of try to adopt an Indian trait, because being an Indian, knowing one language is not enough. You have to know your mother tongue as well as English. Plus, if you are located at some other destination, then you have to learn the local language. And this journey keeps on, going on and on and on. So this is how I admire Indians. And I think basic issue is learning language, this difficulty in India, especially for learning Japanese, comes with a method. It is very boring. I'm very sorry to say this, because I have tried to introduce this Japanese language course at 2 universities. And at one university I failed. And at another university, at Ahmedabad University, I have been successful. That is only because Japan Foundation got involved and they started getting proper guidance from them. So it means that the initiative is not enough. Cooperation with a local institution is not enough. But we do need to have third party like Japan Foundation to get fully involved in guiding the local institutions to be able to have their own language course. And to source language teachers in Gujarat is very difficult. We are not living in Pune. Pune is a mecca of Japanese language studies. If you go to Pune, you will easily be able to find at least 10 Japanese speakers so easily within an hour. In Gujarat, you have to search entire one day. You may not be able to get anyone. So like Japanese companies in Ahmedabad, I said, but it's not in city. They are all located in rural areas. They have their factories, manufacturing plants, all in the corner of Ahmedabad district. So no youths are interested in going to that plant. It's very difficult to relocate to that location for Japanese speakers from Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Delhi, Bangalore. They will not like. So you have to actually look at the entire picture very well. I mean, if you set up the plant, are you really seriously looking about the possibility of contributing to the local universities, local institutions to nurture such talents so that you may be able to hire such professionals so easily at the local level? So in coming 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, this issue will keep on coming back to Japanese industries. Whosoever is setting up industries in remote areas, initial cost of setting up a plant in remote area may be less. But if you look at the possibility of being able to recruit fully, educated professionals who could be ready on the day one to be able to assist you, then you have to have some long-term plan and very deep thinking about this linguistic aspect also. I'd like to tell about this point because, going back to contributing to Indian society, probably Japanese companies are not really forthcoming. This is one of the major points I would like to point out. Being a Japanese, having home in India, and having observed and worked with local people and hearing local youth's comments on Japanese companies, I'd like to tell this point, and I have to tell this because it is very important to understand why we are not able to increase these people-to-people interactions. Because we are not ready to contribute. We are not preparing the ground. Looking at the possibility of earning more could be more enjoyable if you try to nurse the talents in the country where you set up your plant, your office. I think that kind of approach we have to have. And from Japanese point of view, I think this is what we are lacking most. And on the part of cooperation from Japan Foundation, and also embassy, it's excellent. I have had very good experiences from the consulate offices. I have all positive reviews and also positive feedbacks and their eagerness to cooperate with Indian people, Indian institutions. And it's very, very encouraging. And today's event is happening because of such attitude and also such kind of wishes. And hosting institution, JNU, is also my, alma mater. And I'm very thankful to this great institution to have given me the opportunity to study, because I was quite a loner for coming to India to study 30 years back. Nobody was coming actually from my university. Everybody was going for a job. But why I chose India? India has a possibility, even at that time. Like Dr. Dinamani said, about the teaching and the philosophy of this Buddhism. And also Dr. Gitaji said about this Tagore is a good name, big name in Japan, but we don't know much about it. We actually don't know. Still, we may be not knowing much. But still, we are very keen to know, just looking for the opportunities. Like, Miss Ritam said, okay, now I'm very keen to translate Kenji Miyazawa's work. It's quite exciting and thrilling. Why not we welcome such people? We actually had lots of interaction with youth, Indian youth, through one anime program. We invited one lecturer who had, created this Naruto and many other animation in Japan. And he's become a world sensation. And he gave a lecture. So many people were there. Everybody was attentive. And if you go to, Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, or wherever, even the place like Ahmedabad, just I ask people who are learning Japanese, what inspired you to learn Japanese? And they say mostly, I watched this anime, I liked Naruto, I love Totoro, I like Dragon Ball. This kind of question, this kind of answers are there. So we have to actually look at the, reality that what inspires youth and how they are learning. They are not learning in the classroom anymore. They will be just using their gadgets. Because I remember from my experience learning languages in India, if I join in a foreign language class, in the beginning, we have 20 people. At the end of the term, after 6 months, we may be just having 2 or 3 people. Why? Why it is so? Even though the class timings are okay for everybody, why people not coming? The method is wrong. The method is not able to keep people engaged. Probably is a kind of assessment we have to review. So there are very, minor things, but just I think we're just a little bit short of proper coordination. Because I think India has everything. India has a talent. India has the skills. India has the knowledge. India has the resources. India has institutions. Just a little bit more coordination. This is my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavanesa. And I think this question, we are already very late, but I have to ask the other 2 panel members whether they have anything to say on this question. Gita Sensei.
Yeah, it is a very interesting discussion. And yeah, George Sensei, Dinamani Sensei, and Kawani-san. It's what I feel is that I will be reiterating the thing. But if I put it in this way, that whatever we try to learn, or whenever we learn, there are two things. One is that interest, the other one is necessity. As Kawani-san has pointed out, that Indians, they know more than they're bilingual, trilingual, they know more languages. That is, one is their mother tongue, then English, and the other one, why do they learn? Because they live in some third place where their own language. So this is out of necessity you learn. So that is one thing. And the other thing is that interest. As you have rightly pointed out, I have students who come to learn Japanese. Before they come, they sing so beautifully Japanese songs. So song is one thing, songs, then movies, then for the young generation, that is the anime. There are people, we are in a rural setup. Over here, the tourists, they come to Shantiniketan. So when they find that the Japanese department is there, the parents will bring the children to our department and say that, please, my child speaks Japanese. Could you please find out whether he or she speaks proper Japanese, whether it is correct? So they learn from that. As you have rightly pointed out, the interest need to be created, and that when you start a course, there may be 30 students. At the end, there are 3, 4, 5 students. Why? The methodology. Luckily, in our field, in Japanese teaching, we have a lot of experiments. A lot of experiments have been done, and improvement have been done, so that now people don't leave; they stay back. And in my case, like if I cite my, example from my university, we have only 50 seats for Japanese language, whereas 600 to 700 students apply. This shows the interest, but unfortunately, we cannot, give admission to all of them. But as I was just hearing, Janashruti Sensei was telling that they are finding out ways to have online certificate courses. So there are ways to, how we can, those who are interested, to how we can provide them opportunity to learn. So these things may be incorporated. That is what will be my submission.
Okay. Thank you. Janashruti, you have anything to say?
Since if you're running short of time, it's okay. Otherwise, I will just want to say one thing. I'll keep you off. I really kind of resonate with the statement made.
I think the Wi-Fi at your side is not, internet is not working well, properly, I think. You just check whether internet is okay or not. Janashruti.
I think then my internet is a little dicey, logged out.
Yeah.
It's fine, Janashruti,
Anyway.
just quickly give your comments.
Okay, so I just said I resonated with Ambassador Verma's point that we need to really feel the pulse of the young generation. Until and unless we practitioners of Japanese language or area studies understand what the next generation wants from Japan, from India, we are not going anywhere ahead. So the people to people connect first has to be at the next generation. The students who come, they are, the people we cater to, and we wish them, and they who will possibly, be the next torch bearers. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we should now conclude. I thank all the paper presenters for wonderful presentations on their respective field of study, and very lively question answer session. Let us hope our dream of having more Indo-Japanese interactions from the grassroots level. No? I mean, learning of languages and exchange of cultural aspects of both the countries, literature, all these things happens in a large scale hereafter. So with this, I would like to conclude with a great, big thanks to Professor Roy Chowdhury and Japan Foundation, of course, for giving us all this chance, this opportunity to have such a meaningful interaction. Thank you very much. I think now the mic will go to Professor Shravani Roy Chowdhury.
Yeah. Thank you both, Chair, Professor George, and all the panelists. I think we had a very meaningful discussion, and I think we should be able to put it across as one of the recommendations. I would now request my students to formally give the vote of thanks.
Yes, with this, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, Professor P.A. George, for taking out time from your busy schedule to be part of the session and chairing the session. I also thank all the presenters for accepting our invitation to be part of this session and presenting such engaging and insightful papers. And more importantly, enhancing our understanding about Japan's culture and also highlighting the importance of learning the language. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow and have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Kindly note, we are starting at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And we have a full day till around 5:30. We have people joining from USA also in the panel. Finger crossed, the technology will work in our favor. Thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.
Tomorrow, I